It's Freedom Files with James Burns on American Freedom Radio.
Embarking on the second hour, you're listening to Freedom Files live on this Tuesday afternoon, July 26, 2011. I am James Burns, your host, along with Adam, my network producer, man the helm back at AFRHQ in Austin, Texas. I'm coming at you live from Shreveport, Louisiana, and we're honored to be joined this afternoon by Popeye over at FederalJack.com. Not only does he post some great articles and some great videos, he's also a radio talk show host in his own right. He does a show called Down the Rabbit Hole, which you can check out at Orion. Popeye, welcome to the show.
How's it going, James?
Same thing every day. It just seems to get more crazy with each passing day.
It's like we're living in, some dystopian novel, some science fiction movie that I grew up watching in the late 70s, early 80s, and it's all becoming a reality now. It's really weird.
I know. I mean, it's just funny how a lot of this science fiction novels and movies tend to be becoming reality. Fiction becomes fact when you give it enough time. It's
almost like, well, that kind of makes you wonder if they were trying to tell us something, and we just weren't paying attention at the time.
Yeah, and that's something we're going to talk about today, the programming that we get from TV shows and movies and even video games. But first, I'd like to talk about yourself, Popeye. What got you involved in all this? What woke you up to the real world and lifted the veil for you and got you motivated to do such a great site like FederalJack.com and even your own radio show?
Well, I woke up back in 2006, and I already knew that I couldn't trust the government. I mean, the bumper sticker that Ron Paul has on his desk, it says, "Don't steal, the government hates competition." I had that on, like, my first truck when I was 17 years old, and I lived in New Jersey, okay? I always had that attitude. I never trusted the government. And after I was a volunteer firefighter for 6 years, I helped out on 9/11, right in Jersey, right across the water there. And I helped out the Red Cross. I did 12-hour shifts, loading up trucks and driving them to Ground Zero and stuff like that. And 9/11, to me, it was very personal because I was very close, and I was a little more personally involved in sitting in, my living room watching on TV happen. And long story short, I after that, I joined the military. I served, and I didn't really start to pay attention to how we were treated as soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines until I got hurt. And I went from being golden boy to dirtbag. And then I saw how quickly you get treated, how quickly you do a 180. And I was like, wow, that kind of disillusioned me with the military a little bit. And it made me snap back to my original thoughts of, wow, my original thoughts about the military before 9/11 were correct, and about the government, blah, 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 blah. You can't trust them. They treat you like crap. And then just because I always liked mysterious stuff and UFOs and ghosts and stuff like that, from the time I was a little kid, I had heard and researched somewhat about the New World Order. But, after 9/11, that stuff, I kind of put it on the back burner. I didn't even think about it. And while I was recovering from one of my surgeries, I stumbled upon Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper, and that was it.
That's a great book.
Yeah, it kind of set the tone. And it really screwed with my programming, too, in my head, because I would get headaches when I was reading a book. And it didn't occur to me until years later what was happening. The headaches were, I was reading this book, and this was knowledge that my brain was sucking in, and it was conflicting with the programming that I had in my head. And that's literally what was happening to me. And it took me a little while. I mean, I didn't read his book and be like, oh, my God. I researched it, and then my mother got sick, so I kind of got sidetracked, and she passed away from lung cancer. And after I dealt with that and everything, and I had gotten out of the military, I started to read books written by generals and stuff, and guys that were on the ground in Iraq and everything, and I started to see how they micromanaged the war, and that it could have, you have generals telling you that Iraq could have gone faster if they had just had the equipment and men that they said that they needed originally and everything else. And then that led me just into the whole, once I started to investigate the Iraq war further, I realized, wow, I remembered, they used 9/11 as an excuse, this and that. And then I I stumbled upon the movie Zeitgeist one night, and I'm not saying Zeitgeist is the greatest of all films, but the second and third part in particular really had me like glued to the screen to the point where I had to go back and watch them again that same night. I was up for like 5 hours, and I just couldn't believe it. And I was like so angry that this had happened, and I hadn't realized what was going on. Like, to me, it was right. The evidence was right there in front of your face, and it's like, oh my God. So the more and more I researched it, the more and more I realized that I was wrong about this. And I had originally denied that. In my head, I was like, "There's no way that they would." Our government screwed up, but come on, they wouldn't. They wouldn't let it go that far. Like, I agreed that Flight 93 had been, at least in my eyes, it had been shot down. Because we had heard local radio reports that they had shot Flight 93 down, and then it came out on TV that a plane had crashed in Pennsylvania and everything. So I always knew the story wasn't accurate, but in my head, I was still, come on, I was one of those people. And the more and more I researched it, I was like, wow, I was an idiot. And I had to deal with that. I had to get over my own ego. And that's probably one of the biggest things is people need to get over their own egos to be able to accept the information that's really out there.
I definitely accept the fact that I was an idiot a long time ago. When I was younger and dumber back, because, 9/11 happened when I was, 20. And, then I was a hardcore Republican. I was a Bush supporter. I thought the Republicans were good. The Democrats were bad. So like everybody else when 9/11 happened, I was rallying behind the president and all this stuff. And I thought that it was we had to go to war. We had to go to Afghanistan and Iraq. But then I started making some friends because I was in, corporate radio at the time. I was interning there and part-timing, and I became a DJ. And I made some really good friends that were awake to a lot of this stuff already. They read Bill Cooper. They knew that there's more going on than just the BS that you see on the mainstream media. And much like you, when you were first reading the book, I had that same problem with his book, and I also had that same problem with what people were telling me. Look, they're both bad. The Republicans and Democrats, they're both screwing you over. I'm like, no way, because I was a big Rush Limbaugh and Hannity fan. And then everything started sinking in. I mean, the moment whenever it all came out that there was no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, when Saddam Hussein had no ties to al-Qaeda or Osama bin Laden, the boogeyman, and he wasn't even an extremist. He was a secular Muslim. That started laying the first seeds of doubt. And then the 2004 presidential election, that kind of was the big eye-opener. The moment you had these two candidates, W and Kerry, they both went to Yale. They both were skull and bonesmen, both wealthy, both cousins. What are the odds?
Yeah. What are the odds exactly? For people to think that this stuff happens by coincidence and happenstance, come on. Coincidence I don't really particularly believe in coincidence personally myself, but okay, maybe once is a coincidence, but 2, 3, 4 times, that's a pattern. That's how you analyze stuff. I mean, that's how any investigator would analyze stuff. If you and I did something together, right? You and I colluded, conspired to do something, because that is the definition of a conspiracy, James, after all. 2 or more people getting together to do a bad thing. So if you and I colluded to do something evil, and we got together and we decided and we said, we're going to rob a bank. That's conspiracy. That is a conspiracy by definition. Just like the official government story is a conspiracy theory. Just as much as any other theory that says someone else did it. The official government story is a conspiracy theory, is it not?
I agree entirely. I mean, you make the case right there, except for this conspiracy is at a much larger, in-depth level, and it's been going on for a lot longer.
Of course. And a lot of people get, when they look into 9/11, they're like, oh, well, who cares? It happened 10 years ago. Well, everything in our lives today have changed because of what happened on September 11th, 2001. They justify wiretapping, illegal wiretaps, monitoring your phone calls, your email, your text messages, and, now they want to get into Skype and everything else. They justify that because the boogeyman might blow up another building or hijack another airplane from a cave with a laptop. Look out, James. He might be in your closet.
I think I'm going to go hide under my bed. I'm scared. Please take away more of my rights and freedoms, government.
Well, here's my argument for that.
The power, please.
Here's my argument for that. If they hate us for our freedoms and they attacked us for our freedoms, the terrorists have won because they've taken away all of our freedoms in response to the attacks because of our freedoms. So that means that all these guys should be dancing the Irish jig in a cave somewhere right now, and they should be happy. We got the Americans to get rid of their rights. Ha, ha, ha. I mean, that's what's happened in 10 years. We got attacked, quote unquote, for our freedom, and we gave up said freedoms so that we wouldn't get attacked again. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean, that's what people don't understand. I mean, this is what I try to hammer into people when it comes to discussion regarding 9/11, because I realize there are people out there that don't want to believe that the government or shallow elements of government are, the powers that be, carried out this operation. But just simply forget about 9/11 for a second and look what's happened since 9/11. Like you were saying a moment ago, Popeye, the Department of Homeland Security, Patriot Act, these unconstitutional wars, the TSA, the groping at airports, all this stuff. It wouldn't have been allowed to happen if it wasn't for that sad day back on Tuesday, September 11th, 2001.
And they use bin Laden until they killed him on the Illuminati's birthday, May 1st, 1776, / forward to, May 1st, 2011. And they, their little ritual, they do everything. Well, you remember 2 years ago, bin Laden came out and made a tape and said that we should care about global warming. I'm not kidding you. This was
I remember
this
that.
was during the ClimateGate thing. Oh, if you don't pass, carbon taxes, Al Qaeda will attack. Really? Really? So now bin Laden is in the green movement. I mean, come on, people. He's like a poster boy for, anything that goes wrong, they would blame it on the boogeyman. And now he's been drawn out, too long. They knew the narrative was getting old, so they throw away him and they come out with the new boogeyman, who's the American-born Al Qaeda. He's an American citizen, Mr. Anwar, or excuse me, you have the American-born Adam Gadon and the American citizen Anwar al-Awlaki. And so now it's American Al Qaeda. You have to be careful. Your neighbor could be in with Anwar al-Awlaki, James.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what they want. They want us to have this witch hunt. They want us to be fearful of each other, just like during the time of the McCarthy era or the Salem witch trials or the Spanish Inquisition. I mean, no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. Popeye's my guest. His website, FederalJack.com. And they are definitely shifting the direction from the quote-unquote Muslim extremists towards another group of people. And we see that with what transpired last Friday in Norway.
Oh, well, now they're trying to blame conservatives. And it's everything is conservatives. And it's funny how fast our media jumped on and said that it was Al-Qaeda and everything else. And then now they're saying it's, it's, blah, blah, blah. I guess the guy was a conservative, this, that. And a lot of people are attacking some of the media in the United States here for saying that it was a Muslim. And they're saying, oh, see, it's Islamophobia and all this other stuff. I think that there's something bigger behind that. I think that they were doing that on purpose to set up conservative, and I'm doing air quotes, conservative networks like Fox News, and say, look, they're Muslim haters too. They're just like the violent guy in Norway, because remember, he was against Muslims. So now they can use this excuse that the American conservative media and conservatives tried to blame the Muslims. Now they can be like, see, they're dangerous. They're worse than Al-Qaeda. They have guns. Guns are bad. Guns hurt people. I mean, that's what they're trying to get across. And let's get something straight. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. Pencils don't misspell words, and spoons don't make people fat. Okay? They are a tool. They are a piece of technology. It is not the technology's fault that bad things happen. It's the evil schmuck who picks up that tool or piece of technology and uses it for an evil purpose. Just like information. Information isn't evil or good. It just is. It's what you do with it that makes it good or evil.
You're absolutely right, Popeye. And look, at water's another prime example of something that's used for good, yet at the same time can be used for evil. We need water to survive, but at the same time, you have plenty of these mommies who have been, put on so many medications and Prozac who go, cuckoo, and what happens? They end up drowning their kids in the bathtub.
Yeah, so should we outlaw taking baths now because you might drown in the bathtub? Ooh.
Or water. Water should be illegal because it kills people.
It's just ridiculous. It's like I've said before in my show. It's the government can be, a tool. It's like a hammer. It can be equated to a tool or a hammer. Okay, it's the same thing. And if you look at it, government isn't evil or good. It just is. It's a tool. Now, what you do with it is what makes it evil or good. So if you use the government to persecute people and destroy people's rights and, just be a dictator, well, then it's a bad government. But if government is used to, better people's lives, or ensure, not really better people's lives, but the only thing the government's really supposed to do is ensure that people's rights aren't trampled on. That's really the only thing the government is supposed to do. The rest of the things that we kind of give away to them, we're supposed to do ourselves. But it's like a hammer. You could either build a house with a hammer, or you could bash someone's skull in with it. It's not the hammer. It's what you do with it, So it's the same thing with government, information, a gun. I could kill you with a screwdriver. Does that mean we should ban screwdrivers?
I mean, you're absolutely right about that, Popeye, and that's one thing that these people don't seem to understand. And just like in Norway, they had really tough gun laws and restrictions, yet that didn't stop this supposed lone gunman from killing 76 people on an island. And I find that whole story to be a farce anyways. It's hard to believe that one guy could go in all James Bond-like, set off a bomb in Oslo, and then make it across the lake or whatever this island is and kill all these people all by his lonesome.
Well, when the cops got to the island, they knew his name.
Mm-hmm.
And he's running around for, quote-unquote, 2 hours just capping people mercilessly. The police show up, and he's like, puts his gun down and gives up. Really? Really? I'm supposed to buy into this.
No.
Right. How come the cops didn't storm the island and just shoot him? He'd already killed a massive amount of people. Why would you come up? Why would you be like, get on the ground? We need to take you in. I understand you want questions. People want answers and stuff like that. But seriously, in the United States, and I don't want to hear, well, this is Norway. It's different. They're trained anti-terror. They were doing training drills a couple of days before. So they're trained via the same tactics, SWAT-style tactics, special weapons and stuff. It's just dumb to think that these guys wouldn't shoot. It's an active shooter. Come on.
Yeah, I agree entirely, Popeye. I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Popeye is my guest. His website, FederalJack.com. You're listening to Freedom Files on American Freedom Radio. Welcome back to the show. You're listening to Freedom Files live on this Tuesday afternoon, July 26, 2011. James Burns hanging out with you this afternoon along with Popeye. He's my guest. His website, FederalJack.com. He also does a great radio show, Down the Rabbit Hole, over on Orion. And going back into our discussion, we were talking about the shooter, Anders Breivik, before the break, Popeye, and how he was able to go across this island by himself, supposedly, killing 76 people, a couple hours to his lonesome, and yet the police show up and they don't bother to take him out, even though, as you mentioned a moment ago before the break, they have training. They know about these situations. They should have gone in. They should have blasted the guy away. But not only did they not do that, they also knew the guy's name.
Yeah, they were like, hey, stop, blah, 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 blah. Come on. Really? I mean, you guys are trained to kill at a moment's notice with something like that. That's all you guys do is train off. That's what these SWAT teams and stuff do. Their special weapons teams and everything else. And you're going to tell me when you get the chance to do it, you don't do it? Right. I don't think so. I just don't buy it. I think that I think that there was a second gunman. How does a guy walk around an island by himself, capping people? I said in my show on Sunday that this guy didn't have beta mags. And in case the listeners don't know what a beta mag is, a beta mag is a magazine. They're usually round, okay, and it's usually either one big round drum or the betas are two little drums side by side, and they usually hold about 100 rounds, sometimes 150 rounds. Big. So you have a drum magazine with 100 rounds. This guy didn't have that. He had like maybe 15, at the most 45 round mags, from what I could take a guess at, from what I could see. It's judging by what I could see and the pictures of him holding his rifle and everything else. But they didn't report that he was, if he had 100 round mags, I'm willing to bet that they would definitely be telling everybody and their mother that he had them. Okay. They wouldn't be, that would be one of the the talking points. It always is when there's a shooting. It's the size of the capacity of the magazine. So this guy had maybe 45 round mags at the most. He had to reload. He had to take out the empty and put in a fresh mag. Now, I don't care if he knows how to shoot. That's still going to take a couple seconds. Okay? And they said he wasn't rapidly just pop, 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 like crazy. They said he was walking around and just shooting out and shooting people and just walking around capping people. So how does nobody tackle the guy while he's reloading? Yeah. How come nobody had a gun? You know how fast that would have been over if someone had a gun and they fired back? Then he would have had to crouch down and take a position. He wouldn't be running around the island freely capping kids. Then you maybe can come up on him, you keep some cover, you work your way up, and you blow his brains out. That's what happens when you own a gun. You can fight back. But nobody could fight back. They had to lay in the fetal position, and he would just walk up and shoot them. It doesn't it's just appalling to me. Appalling.
You're right. It doesn't make sense, Pop. I mean, from my research, it looks like he probably had a Mini 14 and a Glock. And as we both know, I mean, they have serious, gun laws in Norway. It's a lot more difficult to get a gun there than here in the United States. And, I mean, they even say that this gun wasn't even an automatic gun. They say it was a semi-auto gun. And they say at the most that he probably might have had 30-round magazines. So how many 30-round magazines did he have to be carrying in order to kill that many people?
That's what I'm saying. Come on. He had to reload at some point. You're going to tell me nobody has the testicular fortitude, an island with at least 100 people on it? One person on that island has the testicular fortitude to charge the guy with a rock? Yeah, you might get taken out, but you'll save other people. Besides, who knows? He might freak out and drop his weapon if he sees someone coming at him. You don't know. But laying there and taking it? That's what they want you to do. They want you to be a victim. And when I say they, I mean the establishment, the elites. They want you to be a victim. And, even if this wasn't a false flag, even if this guy really was just off his rocker, okay, it's a perfect example of what not to do in a situation like that. See, here in the States, in certain states in the country, I live in Florida. And down here, everybody's packing heat. If this had happened down here, this would have gone extremely differently. It would have been completely different because people would have been firing back. If you noticed, all these mass shootings always happen in a place where the people are unarmed or they can't defend themselves. And the same is true for Fort Hood, because on Fort Hood, the only people that are armed are the police. The soldiers don't walk around with rifles on bases here inside the country. Weapons are checked into the armory. And you can shoot when you're on the range or when you go out for training and stuff, but you don't just walk around with your weapon until you're getting ready to deploy, and then you get your weapon assigned to you and you deploy with it, and you come back, you bring it back with you. But you don't walk around the military. Soldiers don't walk around military bases inside the United States with M16s and machine guns. So yeah, they were easier targets because they weren't able to defend themselves. They had to wait for the base police to come with the guns. So yeah. It's amazing. You never see it go. You never see a gunman walk into an area where everybody's carrying guns, where everybody has concealed carry or open carry. You never see a gunman walk in there and try to shoot people, do you? No, because it would be a firefight, and he would probably be on the losing end of it. So they always mysteriously happen in the weak links, James. I just find that very suspicious.
And I agree with you 100% there, Pop. I mean, it goes back to my theory about the way things should be. I mean, I don't think people should be forced to own guns, but if we took a page out of what happened in the Cold War between the Soviets and the U.S. with mutually assured destruction, if, say, everybody inside the bank had a gun, the tellers, the bank manager, even some of the customers, why would a potential robber want to go into that bank?
Well, exactly, and that's the way it is. Like, again, down here in Florida, you get a concealed, as long as you don't have a felony, you get a concealed weapons permit. This isn't a shall issue state. This is a will issue state. So, we will issue it to you if you don't have a felony. And that's the way it works. And all the time, there's stories down here in the local media all the time. Last year, some old guy, he was an old Marine veteran. He had a concealed weapons permit. He had a Glock on him in his waistband. And these two guys came in. They robbed the Subway sandwich shop he was at. And they pushed him in. They were pushing him towards the bathroom in the back. they were going to rob him. And he was afraid for his life because he was like, he was smart enough to know that these two young guys are going to take me to the bathroom. They're probably going to overpower me and try to kill me. So he played, weak. He let them, get some confidence. He backed up. And when he had enough space, he drew out his weapon and shot both of them point blank range. Boom, boom, in the head. End of problem. And he didn't go to jail. It was self-defense. The cops were like, yep. He was, defending himself. That's the way it is. Boom, done. That's the way the laws are down here. And yeah, sometimes you can get a prosecutor that, goes too far, like a local prosecutor or whatever. But the laws in Florida are that you can defend yourself. It's the only good thing Jeb Bush did, before he left, was he changed the laws so it was a little easier to defend yourself down here. Someone breaks into your house, you don't even have to give them a warning. You can just shoot them dead. And I'm not saying that that's what people, should do to everybody, but I'm saying we have the right to protect ourselves. And I'm not saying that people should go around killing each other or anything. Look, I'm for peace, love, and harmony. But if you break into my house, I'm going to guess that you're not coming in to have coffee and tea with me. And considering what I do, if you're breaking into my house, I'm going to assume that you're some stooge coming to do harm to my family. And I'm not going to allow that to happen. And that's the way it should be. That's why the Founding Fathers gave us the Second Amendment. It was to ensure that we had the First Amendment. It was to protect ourselves against others, being able to protect myself from someone breaking in or whatever. But it was also to protect the freedom of speech. When I was a kid, my father used to tell me the reason why they gave us the Second Amendment was to protect the First. Otherwise, without it, the first 10 amendments really don't mean, or the other 9 amendments really don't mean anything, do they?
They don't. And your father was absolutely right. And that's one reason why you do what you do and what I do. We choose to use the First Amendment as our weapon right now because we want things to be resolved and done peacefully. We want a peaceful restoration of our rights and freedoms and liberties. And when it comes to gun ownership and your right to defend yourself, whether it's in your home or in your person or in your car, I mean, that does tie into individual responsibility. And that's one of the huge problems that I see that we have not only in this country but throughout the entire world. People no longer take responsibility for themselves. It's just like back on this island of Utoya. I think there's, maybe 600 people on this island, and none of them, like you said a moment ago, none of them bothered to grab a rock and even try to stop him. Why?
Well, see, I harp on that myself a lot. Nobody has personal accountability. It's like nowadays when kids do something bad, I didn't do it, wasn't me. Wasn't me. I didn't do it. Wasn't me. I did that too a couple times when I was a kid, but I got my rear end handed to me anyway because my mother could see through it. She knew. And I was raised old school. My parents were born in the 40s. My father grew up at the, during the end of World War II. My mother was born right at the very end of World War II in Europe. So I had, a different, maybe I'm a little more old school than some people, but I was just raised differently. You see these kids nowadays, and a lot of it has to do with the schooling, like Charlotte Iserby has talked about in her book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. They mind, rape these children in these schools, and they brainwash them, and they get them to think that black is white, up is down, and your parents are bad. You know better than your parents. And look at the climate change stuff. That's a perfect example. They tell kids to go home and rat on your parents for leaving lights on, and you should write your parents. Some schools gave their kids tickets to give to write to the parents. And just last week, I was reading a story. The kids were getting told in a DARE program, hey, if you see your parents with marijuana, you should, call the police. We'll give you a video game system. I think it was a PlayStation 3. And these two kids, they went home, and I guess their parents smoked pot, and they went and ratted their parents out, and they didn't even have like an eighth of marijuana in the house, okay? Which is anywhere in the country, most people don't realize this, but an eighth of marijuana is a misdemeanor. Most places, anything less than an ounce is a misdemeanor. And the schools via the government, the government via the schools are teaching these kids to rat their parents out. Oh my God, they've got an eighth of marijuana. And they came in and SWAT teamed the house, and they arrested the guys, the mother and father, and now they took the two kids away. They got their PlayStation from the police, but now they're in CPS custody. So what a trade-off that is. Let's say I got my PlayStation 3, but I can never play it because I'm too busy getting raped by pedophiles at CPS. That's just lovely.
Yeah, and that's definitely part of the problem, Popeye, is you have this government who we set aside for so long, not just us, but generations before us, and allowed the government to continue to expand its power and authority and continue to suck us dry and justify its existence with new departments and agencies and causes like the war on terror, like the war on drugs, when in the end all that should be individual responsibility.
Of course. Look, I've said this plenty of times before, and I've even proven it. When I used to run a tattoo shop down in South Beach, right, we would have we were in a pretty rough area, and there was always drunks and crackheads and bums and stabbings and shootings, and it was just this one section where the tattoo shop was. It was like this. That's the kind of energy it drew to it, and we would call the cops for stuff. And they would show up 45 minutes later to an hour later if they showed up at all. And when they did show up, if they showed up, they would tell us, you guys shouldn't wait for us because, we usually – they would flat out tell us when we hear a call come in for a fight or whatever, we usually we wait 10 or 15 minutes before we respond because we don't want to have to deal with it. We want them to beat the crap out of each other and then we come clean it up. This is coming from two cops in a squad car responding to a call. Okay, that was on our street, and I was talking to them about it. This is exactly from the horse's mouth. So we just stopped calling the cops. When there was a problem, we handled it ourselves because there was an alleyway right next to our tattoo shop. So we used to we would fist fight people right in front of the shop or drag them out to the alleyway and kick the crap out of them. No lie. And we handled our own business. Usually somebody else would call the cops, and by the time the cops showed up, we were already done. The guy was on the sidewalk knocked out, or they were in the alleyway, or they had walked off already. The problem was already over. I mean, that's really how things would go down. The cops literally told us, you have to handle things yourself because, they didn't even want to come out. So it wasn't even a matter of we can't come out, which now, with all these economic and budget cuts, is becoming a reality, that there are no police because they're firing half of them, or they're telling them not to respond to certain crimes. But at the time, they were just openly admitting they don't want to deal with it. That's their job, and they don't want to deal with it. You know how many cops are cops not to enforce the law? They're just cops because they needed a steady job.
Well, too many of them, unfortunately, and they have more important things to do, as you and I know, like arrest people for filming them and setting up these safety seatbelt checkpoints.
Because that's more important, because revenue generating is more important than actually, serving the community. When I was a kid, they used to say to protect and serve on the police cars. It doesn't say that anymore.
No, it doesn't.
We used to ask who you serving and protecting anyway, because it's certainly not us. But, cops were different when I was a kid. I'm old enough to remember that I'm in my mid-30s, and I'm old enough to remember the cops when I was a kid that I grew up around were these older guys that had been on the, on the police force since, the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And these guys were, they were the older school generation of cops. And you could tell the older cops, there are some bad cops that are older, but I've noticed that a lot of the cops out there that are good are the older school cops. They're not these younger generation ones that, you get a kid that's 21 years old. I'm in my mid-30s. This kid could have been, I was 15 when half
hold
of these
that thought,
cops
Popeye. We got to go to break. Popeye's my guest. His website, FederalJack.com. More of him after this. You're listening to Freedom Files on AFR. To the final segment this afternoon. You're listening to Freedom Files live on this Tuesday, July 26, 2011. I am James Burns, joined once again by Popeye over at FederalJack.com. He also does a radio show, Down the Rabbit Hole, which you can check out at Orion. And before the break, Popeye, we were talking about how police have changed in this country, and you're absolutely right about that. I mean, they've gone from being a lot more about serving and protecting to more about goose-stepping and revenue collecting.
Well, I grew up in New Jersey, and the New Jersey State Police, which I applied to work for, and I got accepted. They have a vetting process. They actually sit down, and they have you come down for an interview and everything. And another friend of mine that had gone with me actually didn't make it. And he was a retired Marine. So, their recruiting process is kind of like the military. And about halfway through it, I just couldn't do it because I was like, wow, I don't want to be part of this. You guys are, I want to like help citizens, but you guys are walking around and, you look like you're getting dressed, look like you're ready to invade Poland. I mean, you ever see the New Jersey State Police uniforms? They're very Nazi-esque. And look at them. They have long, high, the knee-high motorcycle-like boots. The pants, the way the uniform sits. They wear a leather sash. Like almost like a kind of like a holster or harness type thing. If I remember, it's been a couple of years since I saw the uniform. But they wear, in Boston, same thing. Boston State Police, their uniforms look very similar to the New Jersey State Police uniforms. And when you see these guys in their uniforms step out of their car, it's like, wow, am I in 1933 Germany? Where are we? That's what you feel like, and that's what you're supposed to feel like. If you notice, did you notice after 9/11 that all these police departments across the country stopped with their multicolored cars and they went back to the old black and whites?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of them that did that. I mean, that's interesting you bring that up because we still technically have Shreveport police here. They have the white cars with patriotic red and blue. But this was something I wanted to talk to you about last night when we were chatting online. I never really got a chance to bring it up. I was busy doing other things. But I don't know if you heard about this, but not only do we have the regular Shreveport Police Department, there's also kind of a branch of the Shreveport Police Department. They drive around in black squad cars, kind of like in a wolf pack, 2 or 3 cars, racing down the road together. They have yellow writing on the side of their vehicles called the CRU, the Community Response Unit. And from my own sources within the police department, I was told that this is federally funded.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. They want to control everything. These people are control freaks. I mean, they rightly believe that the American public can't do things on their own, which right now we can't. And you know why we can't? Because we refuse to take responsibility, like we said earlier. If we all get over our own egos, get over ourselves, to the listeners, get over yourself. You're part of something much bigger. This world isn't about you. It's not about your family. It's not about your friends. It's not about your success or how much money you have. We're all part of something bigger. And as soon as everybody realizes that, and don't get me wrong, this isn't New Age speak, and this isn't communist speak. I'm not a socialist or anything like that. But we're all human beings. And as soon as we understand and we grow up and we start to accept things and take responsibility, look, I don't need the government to protect me. The police aren't going to protect you. I've already explained that. The cops aren't there to protect you. They're there to, get revenue for whoever they work for, city, state, or county. And they're there to investigate crimes after the fact. But they really don't prevent crimes from happening. Okay? There's no way cops can do that. There's just... that's anybody with half a brain knows that, okay? So they're not going to prevent crime. You know what prevents crime? A self-empowered individual. Because you're less likely to get screwed with if you walk down the street and you can handle yourself. You give off that aura. People will shy away from even screwing with you because they'll sense, wow, this person can take care of themselves. They don't want to, if you put off that energy, people are going to pick it up. We receive and give energy back and forth. We're transmitters, receivers. So people are going to, when, I get the vibes from this person, we'll give off the vibes that you can handle yourself and that you're not going to take any crap and that you will defend yourself. And I guarantee you will have less problems when it comes to things like that because people that pull stuff off like this, they look for like a serial killer. Okay. I as a side hobby, I've studied serial killers for many, many years. And I've read, manifestos, different things. One of the best books you can ever read, it's a really disturbing book. It's called Lust Mord. Lust Mord. The writings and notes or something like that of serial killers. It's really the stuff that some of these writings are in there from these people that go back, 100 years ago or whatever. And I would tell you what, it's really creepy because when you listen to how these serial killers talk and you listen to how these globalists talk, they're very much on the same level, okay? But serial killers, they'll tell you they don't just go out. Sometimes some of them randomly pick people, but a lot of times they hunt their prey, and they try. A lot of them have said, yeah, they'll admit because of their stature or whatever, they would hunt people and purposely pick victims that they knew they could overpower. So if you give off that aura that you're a weak individual, you're going to attract somebody trying to kick your butt. It's just the way it is. But if you give off that aura that says, I'm not going to take it, if that person mistakenly comes over and tries it, you stand your ground. And then, I'm not promising a utopian society, but things will go much better in your life if you're willing to stand up and you give off that aura that you can handle yourself and you're not going to take any crap. Things go very differently. You'd be surprised how everyday interactions with people are different, because right off the bat, a lot of people realize that you're not someone to be trifled with. You're not, and I'm not saying that you have to walk around, with a bandana, sunglasses on, tattoos all over yourself, with a bat in your hands. Just, it's how you hold yourself. It all starts inside you. If you're willing to defend yourself, defend your property, and stand up for what's right, you're going to emanate that, and that's going to attract like-minded people. Plus, it's going to reach out into other parts of your life and affect it in a positive way. Just as much as if you walked around saying, I'm a loser, I can't defend myself, I'm a victim, I'm going to get attacked, the boogeyman is going to get me, Osama bin Laden is going to jump out of my closet and hijack me and fly me into a building. I mean, that's seriously, I know it's kind of funny, but that's the way it is. If you think, they want us to think like that. They want us to be in that fear mindset so that they can control us. Because if we use the opposite, which is love, you have knowledge and power with love, and you think clearly, and you sit down and you take things in and you think about it. Whereas on the fear vibe, you're just very, oh my God, don't hurt me, take away whatever, just protect me, save me. You're not making any rational thoughts. How many times have people said, I made the dumbest decision because I was afraid at the time, but if I think back now, I wouldn't have made the same decision? Of course not. Dr. Bruce Lipton really talks about this stuff. He's a good individual to look up. He scientifically explains it better than I could. He's very more eloquent about it. But, for the people that, in case the listeners that are out there, are a little, what is Popeye talking about? Go check out Dr. Bruce Lipton and you'll see what I'm talking about. That's why there's always this, fear perpetrated in the media. That's why there's always, be afraid, the boogeyman or right-wing extremists or whoever or aliens or, ghosts or, be afraid, because they need that fear. They feed off that. It's easier to control us. If we all just said no, like Neo in the end of the Matrix, he puts his hand up and they shoot the bullets at him and he says no. And he just puts his hand up and he realizes what the Matrix is and he sees everything. That's what we need to do. We need to realize our own power. We need to stand up and say no. And that's where it starts. And then things will branch off from there. That's the only way we're going to fix this mess. Otherwise, we're headed for a I can't say the word, totalitarian police state.
Yeah.
It's a tongue twister.
I know. You're right. I mean, we're going to go in one or two directions if we don't try and resolve this peacefully. Either we're going to head in that direction where we're going to have nothing but full-fledged tyranny that's going to make Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union look like a cakewalk, or we're going to end up having a violent, bloody revolution in this country, and that's going to be just as bad, in my opinion.
Yeah, see, we need a restoration of the Constitution and our civil liberties and our civil rights and clear thinking and free thought and love. Just the vibrational frequency of love. And I don't mean running around like hippies, but we have the world, the universe runs on two frequencies, love and fear. Even mainstream science has admitted this. If you start to look up into quantum physics, and anybody that's ever looked into quantum physics will understand what I'm talking about. Atoms are hollow. Science has admitted that even the desk that you're sitting at, the desk I'm sitting at, the chair I'm sitting in, it's made up of atoms that are actually hollow. So what makes up the atoms? Well, thought makes up that. So, and this gets into the esoteric stuff, and this is the stuff they don't want us to know. This is part of the hidden knowledge that they keep from us. And that's how they can control us. It's not that they're better than us. They just have more knowledge than we do about certain things, and they use that to their advantage. It's like if you knew tomorrow, tomorrow's winning lottery numbers, would you not go buy a ticket with those winning lottery numbers on it?
Yeah. You have a very good point there, Popeye, and we're just about out of time, so we're going to have you back up on the show to talk more about this stuff, and as well as the programming aspects of movies, TV shows, and video games. But in the final seconds we have left, fire off the website and your radio show. All
right, cool. You guys can check out my website, FederalJack.com. And I do a radio show 3 days a week, Wednesday nights from 10 to 11, Friday nights from 10 to 11, and Sundays from 5 to 7 p.m., all Eastern Standard Time on the Orion Talk Radio Network, and you can find it at oriontalkradio.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Popeye. I'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me, James. I appreciate it. Flight 93 down, and then it came out on TV that, a plane had crashed in Pennsylvania and everything. So I always knew the story wasn't accurate, but in my head I was still, come on, I was one of those people. And the more and more I researched it, I was like, wow, I was an idiot. And I had to deal with that. I had to get over my own ego. And that's probably one of the biggest things is people need to get over their own egos to be able to accept the information that's really out there.
I definitely accept the fact that I was an idiot a long time ago. When I was younger and dumber back, because 9/11 happened when I was 20, and then I was a hardcore Republican. I was a Bush supporter. I thought the Republicans were good, the Democrats were bad. So, like everybody else, when 9/11 happened, I was rallying behind the president and all this stuff, and I thought that it was we had to go to war. We had to go to Afghanistan and Iraq. But then I started making some friends because I was in corporate radio at the time. I was interning there and part-timing, and I became a DJ. And I made some really good friends that were awake to a lot of this stuff already. They read Bill Cooper. They knew that there's more going on than just the BS that you see on the mainstream media. And much like you, when you were first reading the book, I had that same problem with his book, and I also had that same problem with what people were telling me. Look, they're both bad. The Republicans and Democrats, they're both screwing you over. I'm like, no way, because I was a big Rush Limbaugh and Handy fan. And then everything started sinking in. I mean, the moment whenever it all came out that there was no weapons of mass destruction.
It's Freedom Files with James Burns on American Freedom Radio.
Embarking on the second hour, you're listening to Freedom Files live on this Tuesday afternoon, July 26, 2011. I am James Burns, your host, along with Adam, my network producer, man the helm back at AFRHQ in Austin, Texas. I'm coming at you live from Shreveport, Louisiana, and we're honored to be joined this afternoon by Popeye over at FederalJack.com. Not only does he post some great articles and some great videos, he's also a radio talk show host in his own right. He does a show called Down the Rabbit Hole, which you can check out at Orion. Popeye, welcome to the show.
How's it going, James?
Same thing every day. It just seems to get more crazy with each passing day.
It's like we're living in some dystopian novel, some science fiction movie that I grew up watching in the late 70s, early 80s, and it's all becoming a reality now. It's really weird.
I know. I mean, it's just funny how a lot of this science fiction novels and movies tend to be becoming reality. Fiction becomes fact when you give it enough time.
It's almost like, that kind of makes you wonder if they were trying to tell us something, and we just weren't paying that and everything. And I had gotten out of the military. I started to read books written by generals and stuff, and guys that were on the ground in Iraq and everything, and I started to see how they micromanaged the war, and that it could have, you have generals telling you that Iraq could have gone faster if they had just had the equipment and men that they said that they needed originally and everything else. And then that led me just into the whole, once I started to investigate the Iraq war further, I realized, wow, I remembered, they used 9/11 as an excuse, this and that. And then I stumbled upon the movie Zeitgeist one night, and I'm not saying Zeitgeist is the greatest of all films, but the second and third part in particular really had me glued to the screen to the point where I had to go back and watch them again that same night. I was up for 5 hours, and I just couldn't believe it. And I was so angry that this had happened, and I hadn't realized what was going on. To me, it was right. The evidence was right there in front of your face, and it's oh my God. So the more and more I researched it, the more and more I realized that I was wrong about this. And I had originally denied that. In my head, I was there's no way that they would. Our government screwed up, but come on. They wouldn't, they wouldn't let it go that far. I agreed that Flight 93 had been, at least in my eyes, it had been shot down. Because we had heard local radio reports that they had shot paying attention at the time.
Yeah, and that's something we're going to talk about today. The programming that we get from TV shows and movies and even video games. But first, I'd like to talk about yourself, Popeye. What got you involved in all this? What woke you up to the real world and lifted the veil for you and got you motivated to do such a great site like FederalJack.com and even your own radio show?
Well, I woke up back in 2006, and I already knew that I couldn't trust the government. I mean, the bumper sticker that Ron Paul has on his desk, it says, "Don't steal, the government hates competition." I had that on like my first truck when I was 17 years old, and I lived in New Jersey. Okay, I always had that attitude. I never trusted the government. And after I was a volunteer firefighter for 6 years, I helped out on 9/11. It was right in Jersey, right across the water there. And I helped out the Red Cross. I did 12-hour shifts, loading up trucks and driving them to Ground Zero and stuff like that. And 9/11, you know, to me, it was very personal because I was very close and I was a little more personally involved in sitting in, you know, my living room watching on TV happen. And long story short, I after that, I joined the military. You know, I served, and I didn't really start to pay attention to how we were treated as soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines until I got hurt. And I went from being golden boy to dirtbag. And then I saw how quickly you get treated, you know, how quickly you do a 180. And I was like, wow, that kind of disillusioned me with the military a little bit. And it made me snap back to my original thoughts of, wow, you know, my original thoughts about the military before 9/11 were correct, you know, and about the government, you know, blah, 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 blah. You can't trust them. They treat you like crap. And then just because I always liked mysterious stuff and UFOs and ghosts and stuff like that, from the time I was a little kid, I had heard and researched somewhat about the New World Order. But, you know, after 9/11, that stuff, I kind of put it on the back burner. I didn't even think about it. And while I was recovering from one of my surgeries, I stumbled upon Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper, and that was it.
That's a great book.
Yeah, it kind of set the tone. And it really screwed with my programming, too, in my head, because I would get headaches when I was reading a book. And it didn't occur to me till years later what was happening. The headaches were, you know, I was reading this book, and this was knowledge that my brain was sucking in, and it was conflicting with the programming that I had in my head, and that's literally what was happening to me. And it took me a little while. I mean, I didn't read his book and be like, oh, my God. You know, I researched it, and then my mother got sick, so I kind of got sidetracked, and she passed away from lung cancer. And after I dealt with